Chapter 15. Crown Eden. The door of the Jump Caro's trip opened. Seth was waiting for them, standing exactly where he had been before their departure. Congratulations! You've unlocked the first wing of the King MatNat History Museum, and consequently, the first wing of Equal 10 Academy, said Seth, excited, tossing colorful confetti into the air. Papandakern joined in the spirit of celebration, releasing fireworks that formed the phrase, "Round 1 win." "I hope you had fun," said Seth, smiling. "If you're here, it's clear you weren't burned at the stake, nor decapitated, and you're safe and alive. And more importantly, you deciphered the riddle. From what I can tell, things got a bit rough for you on this adventure," Seth said, looking at the bruised face of Astium. "But compared to my first ride aboard the JKT, you were 1,000 times better. I ended up with a broken arm and lost a front tooth." Seth opened his mouth and pointed to the fake tooth that had replaced the real one. They all gave a forced smile, trying to feign interest in Seth's ramblings. "Very well. Since you've returned and everyone's safe, head back to the wardrobe, remove those outfits, and place them where you first found them. Upon opening the locker, you'll find your personal belongings and your respective formal attire, cleaned and dry. Get dressed and return here." The three were already wearing their formal clothes. Papandakern, once again, sported a bow tie and a monocle over one eye. He held a small golden cane, pretending to be refined. Seth made a gesture with his hand, signaling everyone to follow him. In front of him stood an ornate wooden door, painted white. They all walked through it and entered the room. The entire space was covered in a black and white checkered pattern, from floor to ceiling. At the center stood a wooden cross, at least 3 meters tall. Seth stopped before the cross, turned to the group, and said, "Before you proceed, you must once again accept all terms and conditions. This works as follows. 1 by 1, kneel with your back to the cross and recite the prayer I'll hand you on a card. As soon as you finish reading, at the end of the word Amen, clearly say, 'I accept all terms and conditions.' Once you do that, that door ahead," he pointed with his finger, "will open. Whoever goes first, step inside and wait for the others to finish." They all nodded. Seth then handed out 3 golden cards, one to Americana, another to Wewi, and the third to Astium. Americana was the first to kneel, followed by Wui, and finally Astium. The prayer read, "Dies meus, ex toto corde, hoenit me omnium meorum peccatorum, ec detester, quia peccando, non solum pones et te justi statutus premeritus sum, sed presertim quia te, summum bonum, est dignissimum in infinitum amorum, offendus. Ideo firmiter propono, adiuvante tua gratia, decidero non peccare, peccandi occasionis fuger, eis poenitentium agere. Amen. I accept all the terms and conditions." Seth led them into a new room, where paintings of rivers, lakes, and oceans filled every corner. Golden Louis, the 16th style frames adorned each artwork, arranged in various sizes, covering the walls from ceiling to floor. Scattered throughout the room, furniture in the same Louis XVI style completed the majestic atmosphere of the place. They stopped before an imposing set of double wooden doors, decorated with delicate golden details. Carved into the surface, 4 animals stood out: a fox, a lion, an owl, and an elephant. "Do you have the key?" Astium took the key from his pocket and held it out to Seth, but then Seth said, "No, I can't open the door for you. Since you represent 3 distinct dualities joined into a single essence, it is necessary that all 3 of you, at the same time, insert the key into the lock and turn it. Only then will the door open." The 3 placed their hands on the key and inserted it into the lock. There was a click. The double doors opened. Seth said, offering the bow, Ladies, gentlemen, and robot, welcome to Crown Eden, the Palace of Equal 1-0. Americana, Wooey, Astium, and Popendakern stood before a bronze tree, 20 meters tall, with twisted branches spreading like veins and roots embedded deep into the ground. Above, a dome projected outward like a crown, marking the highest point. The entire structure had a semicircular shape, with symmetrical wings extending to both sides like open arms. They climbed the steps and made their way to a door on the left side of the great bronze tree. As they entered, they found themselves in a long corridor completely covered in green grass, on the floor, on the walls, and even on the ceiling. From above hung crystal chandeliers with golden details, casting a soft light along the path. They walked down that living corridor, the vegetation wrapping even along the right-hand walls. Then they turned into another similar corridor to the left, equally covered. At last, they arrived at a waiting room filled with armchairs, divans, and sofas, all upholstered in the same fabric that looked as if it were made of fresh grass. In the center of the room, an imposing chandelier, larger and more elaborate than the previous ones, hung from the ceiling, multiplying lights and reflections among the crystals. Americana settled onto a sofa covered in grass. Wooey reclined calmly on a divan, also upholstered in the same vegetal fabric. Astium chose an armchair. Meanwhile, Popendakern bounced excitedly between two armchairs, using them as improvised trampolines, flipping through the air with little somersaults, as if he were in a natural amusement park. A few minutes had passed when suddenly a door opened and everyone jumped in fright. A giraffe's head had appeared when the door opened. Its long neck stretched into the center of the room. The giraffe stopped and looked at everyone inside. Then it said, "Fac FOEDUS. I am a giraffe usher. Fac FOEDUS." They all replied, still startled. The giraffe wore a uniform cap. Around its neck, a lantern was hanging. "Please follow me," said the giraffe, turning its head back toward the door from which it had emerged. Everyone stood up and followed the giraffe's head, which, though in motion, kept watching them, as if the animal were retracting its great neck. They crossed through the door. Everything was dark. Only the light from the lantern, hanging on the giraffe's neck, offered a faint glow. "Attention! Be careful. There is a step. Yes, very good. Keep walking," said the giraffe, speaking with the utmost gentleness and courtesy. The giraffe was guiding them along what seemed to be a mezzanine. The floor was a mix of green grass and thick, interwoven tree roots that leveled the entire surface. The armchairs were upholstered with green grass. "Could you kindly tell me the duality of each of you?" the giraffe asked. "Boaz, Yin, Eva," they replied. The giraffe then led them to the front row, where three side-by-side armchairs bore plaques indicating their respective dualities. The three sat down. Popendakern rested on Americana's lap. Everything was completely dark. They could hear the voices of many people chatting. There was also the sound of various musical instruments playing scattered notes, as if being tuned. The giraffe's head and neck reappeared. This time, it was showing the way for the other initiates who had just arrived. A few minutes passed. The giraffe appeared one last time. Americana looked back and saw, through the faint light of the lantern, that all the armchairs on the mezzanine were now occupied. Everything turned dark once more. Then came the sound of a conductor's baton tapping, drawing everyone's attention. Silence fell. Suddenly, a spotlight turned on. Americana followed the light from where it had emerged, high above to her left, down to the place it now illuminated, at ground level to her right. She blinked a few times and furrowed her brow. It was simply unbelievable that this was an elephant tapping a conductor's baton against a sheet of music. Yes, that was exactly it. An elephant conductor about to lead the orchestra with its trunk holding a baton. The elephant raised the baton into the air, signaling that the music was about to begin. As the first chords were played, the light of the spotlight grew in intensity. Americana thought nothing could surprise her more than seeing an elephant conducting an orchestra. But she was completely wrong. As the music progressed, the spotlight's glow expanded, revealing a vast orchestra of angels and demons. The angels wore white tunics, had blonde hair, light-colored eyes, and halos glowing above their heads. Their large, white wings remained lifted as they played harps, violins, violas, and cellos with precise movements. The demons, with red skin, long horns, exposed claws, and massive bat-like wings, played drums, cymbals, tubas, and trombones. Some had thick tails that swayed to the rhythm of the music, while others snorted through their nostrils as they blew into brass instruments. The sound was powerful, dense, and filled everything. Angels and demons kept their eyes fixed on the elephant conductor, following every movement of the baton. They were performing Il Trillo del Diavolo by Giuseppe Tartini. The final chords were played. The lights went out once again. The silence and darkness lasted only a few seconds. The spotlight turned on again, this time focusing on the northwest side, opposite Americana. On the other side of the hall, at the central mezzanine, the light revealed a bald woman with shaved eyebrows. She wore monk's robes, a white kasaya. She sat upon a throne of twisted branches and green grass. As if her presence alone were not singular enough, what stood beside her made everything even more surreal. To her right, a figure with extremely pale skin, a narrow face, piercing yellow eyes, and long white hair remained motionless, like a bodyguard. Positioned in profile to the woman, this entity extended only one of its wings, enormous, white, and densely jointed, forming a kind of shield that stretched across nearly the entire mezzanine. FOEDUS, inhabitants of the Imperium. Hafasi FOEDUS, scholars of equal 10, she greeted, rising to her feet. Her voice reverberated through every corner of that place. I've seen that woman in a commercial inside the Gibora pyramid. But who is that? Or what is that? Beside her? Whispered Americana. That woman is Director Popes's Rock. She is from Organ the Strategist. She has been leading Equal 10 Academy since 1913, answered Wooey. I read an article about the Angel Ryle, the one who is always by Director Popes's Rock's side. From what I know, they're inseparable. Wherever she goes, he's with her. But I have no idea why, said Yesdiam. My sisters told me that every demon has a corresponding angel. It's as if a specific angel is created to contain the powers of a particular demon. It works like a scale. If a demon goes out of control, the corresponding angel acts to restore balance, explained Wooey. But where is the demon that corresponds to that angel? Asked Americana. Wooey and Estiam looked at each other. Both of them, realizing Americana had noticed their reaction, looked away and lowered their heads. What was that? Did something happen? Was it something I said? Americana asked. Wooey and Estiam looked at each other again. Tell me what's going on right now, or I'll hit both of you, said Americana, her voice trembling. Wooey held Americana's left hand and said, My sisters told me that the demon corresponding to the Angel Ryle is Astaroth. Normally, angels and demons remain contained within seals, inside the King MatNat sphere. But why is the angel Ryle beside Director Popes's Rock and not inside a King MatNat sphere? Insisted Americana. It's because many years ago, there was a professor who was also a patron named Rabbi Thane. He fell in love with the first scholarship student in the history of Equal 10. Her name was, gosh, I forgot, said Estiam. Helena Blavatsky. Her name was Helena Blavatsky. The love Rabbi Thane felt for his student was a forbidden love. So, unfortunately, rumor has it, gossip and whispers, that Rabbi Thane lost his mind because Helena didn't return that forbidden love. Then the rabbi made a pact with Astaroth, the demon that corresponds to the angel Rael, said Wowie. The girl stopped speaking abruptly and looked away again. What happened? Please, tell me, asked Americana. Well, like Wowie said, it's all just rumor and gossip, said Estiam. But I want to know. Tell me, insisted Americana. Okay, I'll tell you. Wowie took a deep breath and continued. The thing is, when Rabbi Thane made that pact with Astaroth, the demon took over the rabbi's body and soul and killed Helena Blavatsky, as well as Director Popes's younger sister. But why was Director Popes's younger sister murdered? What did she have to do with any of this? Asked Americana. It turns out Rabbi Thane was engaged to Director Popes's younger sister, explained Estiam. But if the angel, as you said, exists to balance a demon's power, why couldn't the angel Rael contain Rabbi Thane once he was possessed by Astaroth? Asked Americana. The thing is, Rabbi Thane's uncontrollable passion and forbidden love, added to his thirst for revenge, gave Astaroth near unlimited strength once he took over the rabbi's body. They say it was so overwhelming that the angel Rael couldn't contain him. That's how Rabbi Thane, possessed by Astaroth, managed to kill Director Popes's sister and Helena Blavatsky, said Wowie. What I find strange, according to some newspaper articles I read when I first got access to the Imperium, is that only the body of Director Popes's sister was ever found. Helena Blavatsky's body simply vanished, said Estiam. Do you think she might have escaped and lived for many years in hiding? That could be a possibility, observed Americana. Yes, that could have happened. Like my sister said, there's a lot of gossip, many rumors surrounding that event, and the truth ended up getting lost, said Wowie. But why is the angel Rael always with Director Popes's asked Americana. That's the point. They say the angel Rael felt deeply guilty for not being able to contain his corresponding demon, Astaroth. They say he torments himself on a level no human being could ever comprehend. Ever since he made a vow, since he couldn't stop Astaroth, who possessed the rabbi and ended up killing Director Popes's sister, he vowed to protect Director Popes's for as long as she lives, concluded Wowie. Ever since the rabbi was possessed by Astaroth and committed the murders, he has been called and known as Rabbi Worst Devil, added Estiam. Americana took a deep breath and reflected. Then she said, But why did you hesitate to tell me this? Estiam and Wowie looked at each other again. Americana noticed and protested. Not again. You're making that same face. What are you still not telling me? Okay, I'll tell you. But first of all, you need to understand that all of this is speculation and rumor. My sister said that a lot of these things are just gossip and stories that aren't true, said Wowie. But I want to know anyway, insisted Americana. All right. There's a rumor that's closer to a legend, because no one knows if it's true or just pure gossip. This legend says that, some time ago, one of the demons delivered a revelation to an academic with whom it had made a pact. That revelation claimed that Rabbi Thane, also known as Rabbi Worst Devil, was planning to return to the Imperium, to return to Equal 10, in order to seize all the other 71 demon seals and their corresponding angels, explained Wowie. But that still doesn't explain the way you two are looking at each other. You're still hiding something from me, replied Americana. Okay, I'll tell you, said Estiam. According to the newspapers and articles I had access to, along with that revelation, something else was mentioned. A second part. Estiam took a deep breath, sprayed his nasal spray into his nose, and then said, the second part of that revelation says that Rabbi Worst Devil is forming an order of followers whose goal is to eliminate every person from the common world who dares to become a scholarship student at equal 10. His motive, I believe, is the rejection he suffered from the first scholarship student, Helena Blavatsky. That's why the Imperium bunker never gave another chance for someone from the common world to enter, and why equal 10 remained so long without opening new spots for scholarship students. My sisters, said Director Popes, Rock feared something might happen to another student, said Wooey. Americana stared into the void for a moment. Then she asked, but there's something I still don't understand. Director Popes' Rock has been in office since 1913. How is that possible? That would mean she was born in the year. The year. Americana was trying to do the math. Director Popes' Rock was born on September 23, 1896. That means she is 127 years old. But she stopped aging when she was 49, in the year 1945, explained Estiam. But how is that possible? Did she make a pact or something like that? Asked Americana. In fact, in 1945, shortly after the death of her younger sister, Director Popes' Rock revolutionized the field of human genetics, cloning, and DNA. That was when she created Novakstri, which today offers every imaginable and unimaginable service in the Imperium. Even back then, in 1945, people in the Imperium were already working with human and animal cloning, along with other genetic experiments aimed at extending human life with health and quality. These are things the common world only gained access to 51 years later, with the birth of the first cloned mammal, Dolly the sheep, said Estiam. Wow, Director Popes' Rock really is amazing, said Americana. I'm surprised she's doing so well, considering what happened last year, commented Wooey. What happened? Asked Americana. Her husband was found dead, replied Estiam. He was one of the leading scientists in charge of all of Novakstri. I saw her son, Gnome Rocky, during the academic recess, with that stupid little girlfriend, Hari's blood pure. He looked really bad, said Wooey. Academic recess? Where? Asked Estiam. No, by academic recess, I just meant I saw him during the pause period. Not in some vacation spot or anything like that. I saw him when the Novakstri shareholders came to ask my father for a loan, explained Wooey. The son of Director Popes' Rock, the one named Gnome Rocky, who's dating Pari's blood pure, right? Confirmed Americana. Yes, replied Estiam and Wooey. When I went to the Thoth precinct, in the Jibara pyramid, together with the Chancellor, I saw them walking in, said Americana. That makes sense. According to news sources in the Imperium, the death of Director Popes' Rock's husband still hasn't been solved. It remains under investigation. I read that they're considering the possibility of murder. If you saw Gnome Rocky and his girlfriend at the Thoth precinct, they were probably there to give a statement, said Estiam, thoughtfully. It was very strange, because on that same day, I was taking possession of Helena Blavatsky's belongings inside the Cryptakashik. And besides Gnome Rocky and his girlfriend, I also saw Patron Uvo at the precinct, observed Americana. Patron Uvo at the precinct? What could he have been doing there? Asked Wooey. I have no idea. But when we met, Patron Uvo said the Chancellor needed to be at the gates of Crown Eden at a previously arranged time. Then they said that an oponym was on a mission taking place at that very moment, inside the Thoth precinct. Something very strange happened while I was taking possession of Helena Blavatsky's belongings in the Cryptakashik, said Americana. What strange thing happened? Asked Estiam and Wooey at the same time. I can't explain it. All I know is that, one moment, I was holding the King MatNat sphere I inherited from Helena Blavatsky, And suddenly the Chancellor and Lady Polula started running. A moment later, Lady Polula came back to where I was and said the Chancellor had been attacked by an Oponym who mistook her for a terrorist, replied Americana. Whoa, the Chancellor was attacked by an Oponym and still survived? Incredible, said Astayam, who seemed to be remembering something. Strange. When she gave us the instructions during initiation, she seemed perfectly fine. I was glad to see she was all right. But something about her didn't feel normal, commented Americana, her hand resting on her chin. What didn't feel normal? Asked Astayam and Wooey. It's a silly thing, really simple. Maybe it's nothing. But when I first met the Chancellor, she used the word honey in every sentence she spoke. But when she was talking to us right before the initiation started, she didn't say that word even once, observed Americana. Maybe it's nothing. Astayam and Wooey exchanged enigmatic looks. Do you think the death of Director Popes' Rock's husband might have something to do with Rabbi? Worse devil? Asked Americana. Astayam and Wooey shrugged, their expressions even more pensive. What if? What if? Americana began to say. You know what? Never mind. Say it. Go ahead, insisted Astayam and Wooey. What if the rumors and gossip aren't lies, and Rabbi Worst Devil really is back in the Imperium too? Maybe. I don't know. Americana lowered her head. To hurt you? Are you saying Rabbi Worst Devil might have returned to the Imperium because a new scholarship student was accepted at equal 10? Said Wooey. Yes, you read my mind, said Americana. Don't worry. We're in the same cell now. Nothing bad is going to happen to you, said Astayam, placing his hand on Americana's arm. But he quickly pulled back, turned red, and sprayed his nasal spray into his nose. Astayam's right. Don't worry. No one survives when I decide to use my top hat as a weapon, said Wooey, taking off her hat and pretending it was a weapon. I'll protect you too, Mommy. If you want, I can activate alert mode, danger, 24 hours a day, said Papandakern, still sitting on Americana's lap. Can you all please be quiet? I'm trying to hear Director Popes' rock, complained Nio Nemesis, who was seated in one of the armchairs in the row behind them. Everyone went silent and turned their attention back to Director Popes' rock. With great joy and pleasure, let us give an ovation to each unique and precious member of this magnificent organism, the Imperium, said Popes' rock. To my right, the patrons, who fund part of this organism with great care, said Popes' rock, pointing toward the mezzanine on her right. A spotlight lit up that area. All the patrons stood. Then, as a form of salute, everyone present began shouting and raising their right fists into the air. F.A.C. FOEDUS. F.A.C. FOEDUS. F.A.C. FOEDUS. Americana was startled by the sheer force of that war cry and focused when she spotted Patron Uvo in the front row of the patrons' mezzanine. To my left, the masters, who share their wisdom and intelligence for the growth of this organism with great brilliance, said Popes' rock, pointing toward the mezzanine to her left. Another spotlight illuminated that area. All the masters stood. The same salute repeated, loud and full of fervor. F.A.C. FOEDUS. F.A.C. FOEDUS. F.A.C. FOEDUS. To the southeast from where I stand, the scholars of Organ the Strategist, said Popes' rock, pointing. Another spotlight lit up that area. The members of Organ the Strategist stood. Some pounded their chests and roared. Americana noticed Gnome Rocky and his girlfriend, Pari's Blood Pure, were standing at the front, holding hands while raising the other fist into the air. Another salute followed, just as loud. F.A.C. FOEDUS. F.A.C. FOEDUS. F.A.C. FOEDUS. To the northeast from where I stand, the scholars of Organ the Commander, said Popes' rock, pointing. The spotlight lit up, and Americana saw two identical young women, tall and red-haired, waving from afar at Wooey, who quickly took off her top hat and hid her face. Another roar echoed through the hall. F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! To the north, to the right, the scholars of Organ the Messenger, said Pope's Rock, pointing straight ahead, slightly to the right. The spotlight turned on. Americana looked to her left. In the front row of Organ, the messenger stood Seth, roaring louder than anyone and pounding his chest with force. A thunderous cheer rang out in salute. F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! To the north, to the left, the scholars of Organ the Guardian, said Pope's Rock, pointing straight ahead, slightly to the left. The spotlight illuminated. The entire group, seated in the mezzanine to Americana's left, stood up. The salute was so loud and intense that Americana felt a ringing in her ear. F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! And now, a very special salute to our dear and beautiful creatures, who serve as sentinels of the tree of knowledge, our creations of Eden, said Pope's Rock, opening both arms and looking down. A flash of light rose from the ground floor. Americana leaned forward to see what it was. Various animals, including felines, reptiles, zebras, hippos, horses, giraffes, and birds of all colors, were making noise with their heads raised. There was also a ring of water surrounding a large central tree. From that water emerged dolphins, sharks, and even orcas. Each made noise and moved according to its species and nature. Everyone inside seemed to go wild. A frenzy took hold of them all. A powerful wave of sound spread through every inch of that place. F.I.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! The frenzy and the noise of the final salute lasted for several minutes, until everything fell silent and the lights went out again. The spotlight returned to Director Pope's Rock. She brought her hands together, as if preparing to say a prayer. Now, the sacred moment. The moment of praise and adoration. Our orchestra of angels and demons, the Legion Orchestra, conducted by our elephant maestro. Raise your fists in praise and adoration. Lift your voices as loud as you can. Let us worship. F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! F.A.C. FOEDUS! Pope's Rock shouted, joined by the crowd present, along with all the creatures. Then all the lights turned on. The angel Ryle rose into the air and hovered at the center of the hall, spreading his great wings. The orchestra began to play the opening notes. Everyone stood, with their right hands covering their right eyes. Then the angel Ryle made a gesture with his hands, and the lyrics of the Equal 1-0 anthem materialized before everyone. The lyrics read, Verse I, upon the root, beneath the tree, where angels soar and demons kneel, we forged our fate in secrecy. With blood and ink, we sealed the seal. Refrain, Fac FOEDUS. Hear the call, O sons of light and night enthroned. Our souls are pledged, our pride shall fall, to equal 1 and 0 owned. Verse 2, 4 organs rise, 1 mind, 1 law. The commander burns with faithful flame, the strategist in silence draws. The messenger flies, the guardian remains. Refrain, Fac FOEDUS. Hear the call, O sons of light and night enthroned. Our souls are pledged, our pride shall fall, to equal 1 and 0 owned. Verse 3, the King MatNat spins in flame and sphere. As Solomon whispers through tongue of star, Lucifer waits where the brave draw near, and Jehovah watches from realms afar. Refrain, final, Fac FOEDUS. Hear the call, O sons of light and night enthroned. Our souls are pledged, our pride shall fall, to equal 1 and 0 own. Everyone sang at full volume, following the lyrics. The creatures made noise. As soon as the first chorus was sung, the angels and demons, one by one, took their instruments and began to fly toward Ryle. The angels, with their white feathered wings, and the demons, with their great bat-like wings, formed a circle and spun around Ryle while playing their instruments. At the end of the anthem, everyone raised their fists and shouted 7 times, FOEDUS, 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 FOEDUS. The angels and demons returned to their places. Everyone sat down. Ryle landed beside Director Popes's rock and opened his great wing, once again forming a protective shield. The lights went out again. The spotlight returned to Popes's rock. She kept her hands clasped in front of her chest. Her half-closed eyes conveyed something between reverence and calculation. Her posture resembled that of a priestess, or a queen on the verge of issuing an irrevocable decree. The crowd was still catching its breath after the anthem. The echoes of the last FOEDUS still vibrated through the hall's columns. Popes's rock then spoke. The Imperium is a living organism, and like every organism, it needs order. It needs blood. It needs decision. She paused. Since 1913, when I was honored with the responsibility of leading Equal 1-0, I have witnessed countless generations cross this hall in pursuit of their callings, their pacts, their falls and ascensions. I have seen empires rise and families fall apart. I have seen promises broken and others sealed with the heart itself. Popes's rock lifted her gaze toward the dome, as if she could see something beyond it. But today is different. The hall remained in absolute silence. Today, we face a moment that transcends the ordinary. A generation called to bear the weight of singularity. A calling not meant for all. Only the worthy and the dangerous are summoned to the judging of the organs. Popes's rock slowly opened her arms, as if offering her body to the altar. It is with all due respect, reverence, and honor that now I fall silent. Her eyes rose like blades into the darkness. Let the avatars manifest. Let the body speak. Let the all be the judge. Popes's rock joined her hands once more. The lights of the hall flickered just once, like a sigh from the structure itself, and then everything was plunged once again into darkness. The lights remained off for a few seconds. Then something began to move. A low, deep sound, like the grinding of living stones, rolled across the ceiling of the hall. It was as if the upper dome were awakening. A slow tectonic breath. Small points of light lit up along the edges of the dome. First white, then gold, then red and blue. They formed luminous veins that seemed to pulse beneath the living stone, as if blood and energy were flowing through the celestial flesh of the architecture. And then the ceiling spoke. Not one voice, four voices in unison, one from each direction, yet arriving as a single sentence. An absolute murmur, unquestionable. The body is awake. The tree of knowledge shines. The will of the organism demands choice. Equal 1-0 lives. In that instant, the 4 avatars that adorned the ceiling came to life. Not with hue and motion, but with shifts in presence. The gaze of each sculpture lit with its own hue. Fire, wind, earth, and water. And the living stone seemed to move from within, as if alive, molding expressions in real time. The first to speak was the avatar of the commander. Asterisk the commander. His voice sounded like embers under iron. Steady, masculine, precise. The atom, the King MatNat sphere, the core, the spark, the seal that burns at the origin of all existence. Without it, there is no pact. Without it, no war. Without it, no empire. Then, as if completing a silent synapse, the avatar of the strategist manifested. Asterisk the strategist. His voice was deep and calm, like stone soaked by rain. The cell, the houses, the dwellings, the choice of coexistence, to share space with the opposite, or to shield oneself in solitude. Every cell harbors a dilemma. Then came the sound of fingers plucking the invisible. A spontaneous melody. A laugh. The avatar of the messenger had arrived. Asterisk the messenger. His voice was made of crossing sounds, words, laughter, whispers, and flute breaths. The organ. It is the filter of the whole. It is us. Muscles, voices, thoughts, and friction. 4 rhythms. 1 function. To communicate. To translate. To vibrate. At last, the voice of the avatar of the guardian rose. Low, dense, feminine, as if born from a cave beneath deep waters. Asterisk the guardian. The system. The pyramids. Tiferet. Chest. Gibora. Principessa Tarantula. Prince equal 10. And above them all, Solomon Colosseum, where pacts are sealed, where flesh dances with fate. There was a pause, a silence breathed by the entire hall. Then, as if the 4 had shared the same thought, they spoke together. The organism, the all, the Imperium. And in that moment, the veins of light pulsing in the ceiling spread throughout the hall, connecting columns, grandstands, the walkways between mezzanines, and the tree of knowledge itself. It was as if the entire space were the interior of a living body. Each stone a bone, each beam of light a nerve, each sound a heartbeat. The tree at the center glowed more intensely. The animals of Eden, all around, lifted their heads as if they understood that something sacred was about to unfold. The ritual light of the tree of knowledge shimmered in hues of violet and silver. On the ceiling, the 4 presences pulsed like gods carved from mineral flesh. The time for choosing had arrived. The avatar of the commander was the first to advance. The flame behind him flared. The lion at his feet roared, not as a beast, but as a symbol. His voice rang out, steady, each syllable like a blade. I am Alexander the Great. I am the commander, and in the name of the first force that governs fire, I summon. He paused, as if engraving the name into eternity. Sebastium Zeki Geekwoden. Duality, Eve. Son of a newly gilded house. Fortune made your lineage rich, but not your soul. You carry calculation in your eyes, and in your hands, doubt. Step down. The hall stirred with muffled murmurs. Some laughed. Others looked away. Astiam remained still for a few seconds. His face turned crimson. He wiped his glasses with the sleeve of his suit, sprayed his nasal mist discreetly, and stood up. He began descending the steps. Soon after, the avatar of the messenger rose in an aura of wind and laughter. His fingers hovered over invisible keys, as if conducting a symphony of breezes. I am Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I am the messenger, and by the grace of the air that sings and transforms, I summon. He made a theatrical spin with his wrist, then declared, Wui Helk, duality, yin, daughter of the richest man in the organism. Yet you despise gold, mock power, and carry in your top hat the scorn of the just, daughter of the commanders, sister of the ancients, and still a stranger among equals. Descend, the audience murmured intensely. Some applauded, others scoffed. Wui rose with ease, twirled the top hat on her fingers, and bowed in mute mockery. Then she descended the steps with the poise of one who dances upon the judgment of others. The flame vanished. The breeze ceased. Then the ground trembled. Subtle, steady, relentless. The avatar of the strategist opened his eyes and raised the stone hourglass. I am Machiavelli. I am the strategist. And in the name of the earth that upholds the invisible, I summon. His gaze drifted for a moment, as if reaching into a distant past. Americana del Silva, duality, Boaz. Only the second scholarship student in 84 years. The first was named Helena Blavatsky. She belonged to me. Boaz, Yin, and Eve have merged into a single spark. The singularity of your three dualities has never been recorded. The hall erupted in murmurs. Whispers intertwined with gasps, fingers pointed, hands covered mouths. The tension was alive. Step forward, Americana del Silva, and may your fall be your rise. Americana hesitated. She could feel her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Popendetron squeezed her hand. Her legs barely obeyed, but she stood and walked. At last, the avatar of the guardian lifted her eyes. Ocean eyes. Eyes that saw what no one dared to speak. Her voice came like a breeze over silent waters. I am Florence Nightingale. I am the guardian. And by the hidden paths of unshed tears, I summon. She paused, long, as if holding back a silent lament. Nio Nemesis, descendant of a noble lineage, whose seed was never mingled with foreign fields. Duality, moon, of the sun-moon house. Silent as a shadow, yet ancient as the cycles. Today, your duality must be quieted, for you shall join the triple that is already one. Step forward. A cough broke the silence. Nio Nemesis took a sip of his syrup and stood up quietly. He showed no expression. He simply walked with disconcerting serenity, one step at a time, as if he had known everything before everyone else. The four initiates were now making their way to the ground level. The hall braced itself to witness the impossible. As the four names echoed through the hall, Sebastian Zeki Geekwoden, Wui Helg, Americana del Silva, and Nio Nemesis, the collective sound of the spectators transformed into a boiling organism. Some upperclassmen whispered through muffled laughter. Others watched with narrowed eyes, measuring each step of the initiates as if they were pieces on a political board. Professors exchanged glances with unreadable expressions. Patrons whispered to one another, slowly shaking their heads. A few clenched their fists, as if what they were witnessing had violated silent expectations. The name Americana del Silva seemed to have reverberated more than all the others. The mention of Helena Blavatsky had reopened wounds that had barely begun to heal. Some of the older ones lowered their heads. Others, younger, furrowed their brows, trying to grasp what it truly meant. The silence was not total, but it was thick with tension. Americana descended the steps as if walking across a minefield. She could feel every gaze piercing into her skin. The vintage skirt of her Dior Venus dress, a legacy from Helena, weighed like lead. The sound of each heel felt amplified. She wished to vanish. She thought of stopping. She thought of turning back. But she kept going. Wui held by her side, feigned indifference. But her jaw was clenched. She spun the top hat obsessively between her fingers, like a nervous tick. She tried to project disdain toward the expressions around her, but her eyes scanned the mezzanines with the tension of someone who recognized faces that despised her. And worse, faces of her own sisters. Sebastian Zeki Geekwoden, known as a Steim, walked in short steps. Every 3 steps, he paused to adjust his glasses. From time to time, he sprayed his nasal decongestant with such force that his nose turned even redder. The crowd looked at him as if he were a fraud. He knew it, and because of that, he walked more and more hunched over. Nio Nemesis came last. His short legs could not keep pace with the others. He coughed discreetly. The liquid in his syrup bottle sloshed quietly. No visible emotion. He did not smile, did not frown, did not tremble. But his eyes were fixed directly on the tree of knowledge. Some said Nio came from a noble yet forgotten lineage, where cousins and even siblings had married one another. When the four reached the edge of the mezzanine, the final steps led them down to ground level. In front of them, the tree of knowledge awaited, radiating a nearly liquid light, as if dreaming with its eyes open. But before they could take another step, Papandakern slipped out of Americana's arms and jumped ahead of them, arms raised. "Mommy, I'm going with you." The childlike scream echoed like a thunderclap amid the solemnity. Papandakern ran across the mezzanine, his little plush feet making soft, muffled taps on the living wood. His golden cane fell along the way, but he didn't stop to pick it up. The panda ears flopped side to side, and the monocle slipped from his eye. The entire hall watched him in silence. "Nitrogen monoxide, Papandakern." Americana tried to stop him. I'll be right back, I promise." But Papandakern kept going. As he reached the last step, he tripped and fell with a dull thud. He immediately stood up, rubbing his eyes with his round paws, trying to hold back the tears. "I want to go, Mommy." He cried again, his voice cracking into a metallic whimper like digitized plush. The audience couldn't hold it in. Suppressed laughter spread through the hall. Some squirmed to keep from laughing. Others laughed without guilt. In the patrons' mezzanine, an elderly lady wiped a tear with a handkerchief, moved by the unexpected drama. In Organ the Messenger, 3 students nearly fell from the bleachers from laughing so hard. Americana felt her face burning. She clenched the fabric of her dress tightly, as if trying to stop her own soul from slipping out through the hem. "Papandakern, please." "You can't come," she said through gritted teeth, trying to sound firm. "But I wanna," Papandakern yelled, clinging to the hem of her dress. Americana tried to break free, but the robot panda was surprisingly strong. "Let go of me," Americana whispered, a mix of anger, embarrassment, and guilt tangled in her voice. "Wah!" Papandakern began to cry, now sprawled on the floor, flailing his plush paws like a child in the middle of a tantrum. And then the hall trembled. A massive hippopotamus with shimmering skin and golden eyes leapt from the ring of water surrounding the tree of knowledge. It landed before the robot panda with a crash that made the mezzanines quake. With its mouth slightly open, teeth exposed, and a guttural voice, the creature spoke. "Unauthorized entity. Return immediately." Papandakern slipped backward, his eyes wide, the monocle cracked across his face. He cried even louder now, visibly terrified. "Mu Umi." The hall hovered between commotion and uncontrollable laughter. But before any reaction could take shape, a new voice echoed, gentle, feminine, and full of compassion. "Wait, please." It was the voice of the Guardian. The avatar of Organ the Guardian, Florence Nightingale, shifted slightly within her living niche in the ceiling. Her eyes, 2 oceans, rested on the weeping little creature. "Don't cry like that, dear one." Immediate silence fell. Sometimes the most innocent among us carries a spark that cannot be ignored. And sometimes an exception reveals more than 1,000 rules. Florence Nightingale looked at the other avatars. Her gaze did not ask. It declared, "My brothers, I propose we open a ritual breach. Just this once. In favor of this being." Mozart sighed. "As long as he dances in the dream, I have no objection." He chuckled to himself. Machiavelli spoke without moving his lips. Exceptions must bring consequences. But so be it. Alexander simply nodded with his eyes. A war has begun with less. Papandakern, still on the floor, sobbed. But when he heard the verdict of the avatars, his glass eyes lit up like tiny suns. "I am going," he murmured, his voice shaky and choked. The tree of knowledge responded with light. Its roots stretched outward, and the earth beneath the 4 initiates trembled gently. A path of interwoven branches and damp moss opened toward the center of the hall. At the end of the path, a curved, narrow, and delicate bridge appeared over the ring of water. It was made of living wood, braided like the fibers of an ancient harp, adorned with ornaments resembling fossilized cherry leaves. The water surrounding the tree rippled gently. Dolphins, koi fish, sharks, and even an orca swam in slow circles, as if moving to the rhythm of a sacred ceremony. Each step taken on the bridge made the aquatic creatures look up, not with the eyes of beasts, but with the eyes of awakened beings. As the 5 walked, the terrestrial sentinels such as lions, antelopes, zebras, giraffes, and reptiles stepped aside to make way. Some spoke simple words, almost whispered. Good luck, honor, truth, be the chosen ones. The group crossed the bridge. As they stepped onto the sacred soil surrounding the tree, the living structure responded. The trunk of the tree trembled, and with a sound like the cracking of bark under sunlight, 4 translucent capsules began to slowly emerge from its core. Each capsule looked like a glowing wooden bed with curved edges that molded to the body. The interior pulsed with a milky, inviting light. Thin branches stretched around it, like arms that welcomed without restraining. Sebastian Zeki was the first to approach. He hesitated, cleaned his glasses once more, looked up at the sky or at the ceiling where the avatars watched them, took a deep breath and lay down, holding the nasal spray against his chest. Wui Helg came right after. She said nothing, tucked the top hat to her chest, and lay down with her eyes fixed on the void. Her fingers tapped softly against her chest, as if rehearsing a silent tune. Nio Nemesis walked slowly. He touched the wood of the capsule like one greets a temple, rose onto his toes, and entered with some difficulty. He lay down, face turned toward the tree, and held the syrup bottle tightly against his chest. Americana del Silva was the last. She looked to both sides, felt the dress tighten around her body, walked toward the capsule meant for her. Before lying down, she turned discreetly toward Papandakern. But before any word could be said, the avatar of Organ the Guardian, Florence Nightingale, spoke once more. Her voice echoed through the branches. From this moment on, your bodies shall remain here, under the tree's care. A substance will be injected directly into your veins. This substance will activate the core of the tree of knowledge, and your consciousness shall be projected into a holographic plane. Florence spoke calmly. She seemed to be conducting invisible instruments. Each of you will live a mission. You will be together in the same world. But your decisions, reactions, actions, and silences will be evaluated individually. Based on that, the tree of knowledge itself will recognize to which organ you belong. The avatar paused briefly. Everything that happens within this projection will be visible in the canopy of the tree of knowledge. There, all present will witness your journeys in real time. Good luck, initiates. Americana lay down. Her eyes scanned the inside of the capsule's dome. One of the tree's branches moved with clinical precision and gently inserted itself into her left arm. She felt a slight prick, but before the substance took effect, she turned her head. At her side, Papandakern was standing still, upright, waiting. His little eyes were wide open, alert. A thin, glowing branch extended from the tree, and at its tip, a small door opened with a tiny USB port. Papandakern let out a little squeal. I ni wedi. Thank you, tree. With a click, he opened a compartment in his belly. From it came a short, gleaming cable. He carefully connected it to the newly formed port on the tree. USB mode activated. The panda's eyes went dark. He fell to the side with a serene smile. Inside the capsule, Americana felt the cold liquid slowly flowing through her arm. It was as if liquid ice had merged with her blood. A chill that didn't hurt. It only numbed. She looked upward, toward the ceiling, toward the 4 avatars. They were motionless, watching. Her heart began to race. And then everything went dark.